From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
And there's SportsLine on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Tuesday night on News Channel 5 Plus. A lot of things converging right now in the sports world. You get set for the NBA Finals coming up this week. You've got hockey into the Final Four conference finals happening now. The Western Conference already underway. Colorado with a 2-1 lead on top of Edmonton in the first period of game number 1. In the Eastern Conference, of course, you have the Lightning still live for a three-peat with the Stanley Cup, which is absolutely unheard of, taking on the Rangers, who won in Game 7 last night in Carolina. Of course, the NBA Finals are the Warriors and the Celtics, who were able to win in Game 7 in Miami. So a couple road teams winning big-time Game 7s to clinch off conference finals in the Eastern Conference, respectively, in the NHL and the NBA. So you're getting to that time of year. You had the Indy 500 over the weekend. Marcus Ericsson, the champion here last year for the Music City Grand Prix, gets his third IndyCar win, this time the biggest of them all, in the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. And then you've got college baseball as well, and so much is on the line for Tennessee and for Vanderbilt. And these two teams going into the postseason. Vanderbilt, of course, with a storied tradition under Tim Corbin over the last 20 years and what they've been able to do. And certainly the last decade, there's been no program in the country that has been more consistent and better in June than what Vanderbilt has been able to do. Commodores have been to Omaha 5 times over the last decade, 4 times in the last 7 years. And remember, one of those years there was no postseason because of COVID. They've been to the championship series each of those respective trips in their last 4 times, including last year when they lost to Mississippi State. Of course, they won the national championship in 2014 and then again in 2019. And that 2019 team, by the way, for my money, is the best college baseball team I have ever seen. There have been a bunch of really good ones out there, and frankly, Vanderbilt has had a bunch of really good ones out there. But to me, to be a national, or to be in the discussion of greatest of all time, you have to win the championship in the year in which we're talking about. And so, as I look back, I mean, one of the truly great Vanderbilt teams in terms of talent and the overall season was 2013. That team was incredible. They won 27-3 in the SEC, a record that not even this Tennessee team touched. So I'm not sure anyone will ever touch it. But that team, unfortunately for their legacy, lost in 2 games in a super regional to a loaded Louisville team that had some big-time pitchers. They didn't even make it to Omaha, let alone win a national championship. So they can't be an all-time great team because of that, no matter how talented they were or how great the body of work was. The Vanderbilt team in 2019 did it all. They won the SEC with a great season. They went 23-7. They won the SEC tournament, rolling through Hoover. They barely had a blemish on the way to Omaha. They had a perfect game from Kumar Rocker in there. And they get to Omaha, and ultimately they win the championship series over Michigan. And they finish the year at 59-12, which is the most wins ever by a champion out of the SEC. It's the most wins by a champion since the 80s. And the 12 losses are the fewest since 1995. So when I look at college baseball, and I've really followed college baseball since the mid-90s, so 25, 26, 27 years, to me, that's the best team I've seen. And that spans a couple eras. There have been 2 different eras of bat modifications that have totally changed what the game looks like. I mean, if you remember back, 1998, USC won the national championship, and the final of the championship game was 21-14. It looked nothing like a baseball game. And so they changed the bats and the specifications, and they modified things in order to try to make the bats act a little bit more like a wooden bat, not be so powerful, not have so much pop, and take some of the offense out of the game. It worked to a degree, but then they did it again about a decade later. So 2 bat changes later, the game is a little bit different. But I've seen teams in all those eras, and I think what that Vanderbilt team did in terms of on the mound and at the plate was unparalleled. I say all that to tell you that now the pressure is on this Tennessee team. Because at 53-7 and the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, this Tennessee team is the best team I have seen compete in college baseball. It's better than 2019 Vanderbilt. It's better than 2013 Vanderbilt. It's better than any of the other champions we've seen, the South Carolina teams that went back-to-back, the Oregon State teams that went back-to-back. This team is better than any of those. And it has the potential to have, in my opinion, the greatest season in the history of college baseball. But they've got to do it now this month, or June, which starts in a little under 4 hours. Tennessee's got to do it then. Otherwise, everything else it's done is for naught. 53 wins. That's the most ever by an SEC team going into the postseason. 25-5 in the regular season of the conference. They won the SEC, which, by the way, I don't know if you've checked, is a pretty good baseball league, by 6 games. They won it going away. No one has ever done that before. And then, just for good measure, they went to Hoover and won 4 straight games to take home the crown, outscoring their opponents 35-10. This team has the best ERA in the country by more than half a earned run. It has the most home runs in the country and most home runs in a decade in college baseball, but more than the second-place team this season by 13, and everybody else is way beyond that. And if you just look at the SEC stats again, you'll see a Tennessee team that leads the league in hits, runs, batting average, doubles, triples, home runs, walks, ERA, strikeouts, and opponent's batting average. I'm not sure if that's everything. Stolen bases aren't in there. Walks allowed are not in there. But, I mean, that is utter dominance. They're at the top of everything. It has frankly been absurd how dominant this Tennessee team has been. But now, because of that, all the pressure is on. If you look at the field of 64 and you see Tennessee as the number 1 overall seed, you would be wise right now to put your money on Tennessee. I mean, take Tennessee versus the entire field. And that never happens. Certainly in college baseball, but really in team sports. I mean, maybe you did it with the Warriors teams or the Heat teams, kind of those super teams in the NBA. But we don't do that in baseball. You don't do that in the NFL. Even when the Patriots are winning them all. I don't think you looked at the playoffs every year and said, oh, we're definitely taking the Patriots. They kept winning at times, but oftentimes they came out of nowhere to win. We just don't really do that in team sports. That type of a discussion was reserved for Tiger Woods at a major during his heyday. You know, do you take Tiger or the field at Augusta? It's the type of discussion that's reserved for Roger Federer at Wimbledon or Rafael Nadal at the French Open. By the way, he had another incredible performance on the clay today, ousting world number 1 Novak Djokovic. A little bit of a revenge from last year's semifinals, winning in 4 sets today in the quarterfinals. But that's the type of greatness that you have the conversation. Do I take this guy or do I take the field? And that's what you're legitimately doing right now with this Tennessee team. Stanford's the number 2 overall seed. Oregon State's 3, Virginia Tech's 4. Nice teams. They've had good seasons. Their seasons don't come close to matching up to what Tennessee has done. Frankly, I'm not convinced the next best teams in the country aren't other SEC teams. But Tennessee so ran away from all of them that they're not right there behind them in the pecking order. And that's not to say Tennessee is automatically going to win the national championship. We all know how this works. College baseball's postseason is as peculiar as any. Upsets run rampant. All it takes is a great pitching performance by your opponent, or maybe a not so good pitching performance by one of your guys, and you're in trouble. You're in the loser's bracket. You got to scrap and claw to keep on going. So there's no guarantees. For that reason, it's why we haven't seen the number 1 overall seed win the national championship in college baseball since Miami did it back in 1999. That's a long time ago. I was a freshman in high school the last time the number 1 overall seed won. So Tennessee has the bullseye on its chest. They're going to have to deal with the pressure. They're going to have to deal with every other team gunning for them. And the idea that history is on the horizon as well. Last year, Arkansas was loaded. Swept the SEC regular season and tournament. Number 1 overall seed. Nearly got eliminated at home by Nebraska in the regional. And then did get eliminated at home in the super regional by NC State. There's pressure that comes with that, and that's what Tennessee's going to have to deal with. But all the evidence we have is that Tennessee is equipped to do that. It has done it time and time again this season, and it plays with a swagger and a looseness that sort of says, bring on all comers. We're ready for this. And so now the Vols truly get to prove how great they are. They start with the regional at Lindsey Nelson Stadium, chance to be at home. They open against Alabama State, the SWAC champion, on Friday evening at 5 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock Eastern. And the other two teams there are also teams that mash the ball, by the way, Georgia Tech and Campbell. But while they may be able to mash the ball, Tennessee pitches and mashes the ball. And they mash the ball better than those two teams mash the ball. So that's your regional. The super regional matched up against the Georgia Southern regional. Georgia Southern, the 16th overall seed. Guess what Georgia Southern had happened to it in the opening weekend of the season? Tennessee outscored Georgia Southern in a 3-game sweep by a final combined 33-3. It was an utter beatdown that set the tone and table for what this season was going to be for Tennessee. So it could be Georgia Southern again. It could be Notre Dame, who's had a fine season, probably deserved a host in their own right. Could be Texas Tech, who's had a lot of postseason success in the past for Tim Tadlock. But you're going to take Tennessee at Lindsey Nelson Stadium over any of those teams. And you should. And then when they get to Omaha, they will be the favorite there as well. But that's the deal. This is a team unlike any we've seen in a long time, if not ever. And the numbers speak for themselves, that they would go down as one of the truly all-time great teams. Could be the first team to win 60-plus games in a college baseball season since the 80s, when they didn't have a cap on the number of games you could play. Could be the first team, would be the first team to win a national championship with fewer than 12 losses since the mid-90s. All of that is on the table for Tennessee. And immortality is right there next to it. As not just the first baseball national champions in Tennessee program history, but as maybe the best team we've ever seen in the sport of college baseball. But now it's up to them to do it. It's up for them to actually go out on the field and do it and get it done. So the pressure is on Tennessee. And I wrote the column on NewsChannel5.com that it's national title or bust. And you hate to put that type of pressure on any team going into a team sport tournament, especially in college athletics where things are so up and down all the time and upsets are what makes it great. But given the season and how much Tennessee outpaced the field during the season, you got to take Tennessee versus the field now. And so the pressure's there. Can they do it? Can they reach that pedestal that really no team has done before? It's a lot of pressure. It is a lot that they're going to have to deal with from all comers to get to that place. But the evidence we have from the season tells you that there's really no other option than Tennessee finally dogpiling. They didn't want to dogpile in Hoover after the SEC tournament title. They saved it. And the dogpile they want is in Omaha in late June. Fireworks going off above their heads there at the newly renamed Charles Schwab Field. That's the dogpile they want. And they better get it, because otherwise this is going to be a season where every player on that team, Tony Vitello, and every member of Vol Nation will look back and think about the season that could have been. What could have been from this team that had played so well. That is what June is all about. In college baseball, it creates champions. This year, it could create the all-time greatest champion in the sport's history, if Tennessee is up to the task. Phone lines are open tonight, 737-7767, the number. We'll take our first break. When we come back, we will hear from those Vols after their SEC Tournament Championship. Stay tuned. More SportsLine on the way after this.